Hi, kids. This is just a review of the different scenarios and the types of governments or non-governments in each of those scenarios, and what that looks like, and especially what that has looked like historically and its relationship to who has power and how that power is shared or not shared. So first one that we have here is anarchy. And anarchy, we're including this, but it's really the opposite of a government. It is the lack of a true system of government. Generally speaking, we see this in areas that have been engaged in some sort of civil war where there's no longer a functioning government and people revert to just whoever is most powerful in different regions is going to be who takes control, and the people will align themselves with one or more of these kind of local warlords or things like that. Power in these cases is taken, it is not given. There's no one to give power to a representative of any kind. It is simply who is the strongest or who can consolidate the most power within a particular area. Historical examples, again, it's usually a transitory period. It's usually not something that's long-lasting. Various time periods in the United Kingdom, kind of Middle Ages-ish, we see some of this going on. Modern world, Afghanistan, sort of at various points, not so much right now. The current incarnation of the Taliban is kind of using the structural implements that are already in place there as the United States has pulled out. But previous to that, the Taliban rule in the 80s especially, you might characterize pieces of it as anarchistic in nature. But again, it's a lack of a true government itself. Next one we have here is democracy. In a democracy, all eligible voters make all decisions. The power in a democracy resides in the idea that one person equals one vote. That means my vote counts the same as somebody else's vote. Even if I'm better, stronger, richer, more powerful, smarter, my vote still counts the same. And we talked kind of in class how that can be a good thing and a bad thing. In terms of historical examples, we're going to look at ancient Athens. That's really the most classical example of this particular style of government. In ancient Athens, not everybody was an eligible voter, right? We're talking about men, we're talking about landowners, but each person's vote counted the same, meeting to discuss and then voting from there. Modern day examples, there really are no true examples of a modern day democracy. The world's kind of too big. If you think about the size of Athens as a city-state, that's one of the only ways in which they could do this. In the modern world, to have a true democracy would be very, very difficult. We do see representative democracies or democratic republics, however you want to consider them. India, the United States, to some degree, the United Kingdom would be another example of that as well, okay, at least in terms of the democratic process. Dictatorship or totalitarian state, one leader has all the power, absolute leadership. The power is coming from the top down, that's it. Only one person can bestow power in any capacity to anybody else. In many of these cases, the military is used as an arm of the dictator. The dictator uses the military for personal reasons, to keep power, to keep control. In this case, it's the picture that we're looking at here, maybe a show of force, whatever it may be. But the military is an extension of that totalitarian rule. Historical examples, Rome's emperors, as we move out of the Republic and into the Roman Empire. Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler would be another example of this. The Führer with Benito Mussolini's Italy would be another one. Kind of these totalitarian rulers where they have all of the control. Modern day examples, North Korea is really the best example of this. Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, these leaders who have total and complete control. And in many cases, these leaders are assumed to, even if it's not religious specifically, assumed to have godlike powers or deified in some way. North Korea is a really good example of that too. Theocracy. Speaking of religion, the laws of the government are based on the laws of a particular religion. In many cases, these leaders will claim a relationship to the gods. They will claim that the gods have bestowed their ability to rule down upon them. Not every single one, but many of them. And in these theocratic states, there's kind of a strict adherence in many cases to the laws of the religion. Simple things like dress, those are things that if a religion emphasizes it, you're going to see that reflected in the laws of the nation state as well. Historical examples, kind of ancient Egypt, right? We talked about how the pharaohs embodied the spirit of Horus or became the spirit of Horus. here on earth. And so there we have that religious component there. Belief could speak to the gods and talk to the gods. Modern day examples, Iran is one example, the Islamic State of Iran. And then Vatican City in terms of Catholicism. Again, tiny nation state, but it is considered a separate nation state within the city of Rome. Both of those have laws that are based around Islam and Catholicism, respectively. Republic. Leaders are selected to represent the people. Okay, republic, represent. They are selected in many different forms. In some cases, they might be positions that are passed down from family members, such as in the Roman Senate. They could be positions that you are voted into, such as a democratic republic like the United States. But there are representatives who are supposed to represent the people, okay, the will of the people. Usually there are term limits or power limits. We'll see that with both the Roman Republic and the Democratic Republic or representative democracy of the United States. This idea of limitations based on the people, because they're supposed to be people in governance are supposed to represent the will of the people. Historical examples, I mentioned the Roman Republic a few times, the Galactic Republic in Star Wars, in between kind of the original 3 movies and then the 3 movies that came after but were set before. Modern day examples, United States, mentioned that a few times too. Monarchy, usually 1 to 2 people in total charge. Royalty, usually that power is passed down along family lines. In many cases, but again, not all, father to son, father to son, father to son, that sort of thing. We're going to take a look at some of those, both in terms of China and Europe, these dynasties that are set up where power resides within one particular family. Historical examples, Great Britain and medieval Europe. We're going to look at China, as I mentioned, dynastic China, another really good example. Modern day examples, we really don't see many true monarchies. The Kingdom of Jordan would be a good example of a modern day true monarchy. Most modern examples are more of a constitutional monarchy, where a constitution and agreement exists between the monarch and the people in some way, usually some form of parliament or something like parliament. That's the way that England / the United Kingdom is today. This concept of the power of the monarch, it really resides within parliament. In theory, the queen, she has decision-making powers, but in reality, we really don't see that. Oligarchy, rule by a few powerful people who have total control. They can be selected to those positions, or they can take power themselves. Historically, both of those things are true. Our historical example here is Sparta. Sparta's emphasis on kind of military lends itself well to an oligarchy, where all of the power, all of the rules coming down from above and following orders, those things we mentioned, make a lot of sense when we put them together. In Sparta, you could have anywhere from 2 kings to 18 or 30 kings at various points in time. And then modern day examples, kind of, sort of, Pakistan over the course of the last 20 years. And then the economic oligarchy that we see here is OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. That is an economic oligarchy. The largest oil producers in the world essentially figure out how much oil to put out into the global marketplace to sell. And then from there, that helps to set the price of oil worldwide. So again, ruled by a select few people who have total control. Last one here, socialism, and there's a little bit of a caveat here. Number one, this is kind of it's a relationship between government and economics. But in a socialist society, the government controls most of the industries. And in doing so, will assess need and then decide the appropriate levels to, in some cases, set prices, in some cases, offer programs, social programs, those kinds of things for the nation. Historical example is going to be the Soviet Union. Not really true socialism. We really haven't seen true socialism enacted on a large scale. Soviet Union, probably the best historical example of this. But again, not all of those industries were government owned, and there's a little bit of oligarchy that goes along with that too. So it's tough to say that it's like a true example. Modern day examples, again, sort of Norway would be the best example of this. in terms of government control over industries. But again, it's really tough to find a true example of socialism. And in some of these cases, as we've looked at these governments, there are bits and pieces and elements of them. There are ideas of government programs that are incorporated in the United States that don't necessarily mean the United States is socialist, if that makes sense. So those kinds of ideas, we have to kind of pick and parse and show some ability to show nuance as we talk about them. But those are the scenarios that we went through. And if you have any questions, you can always shout.